Welcome back, Beyonders, to Tabletop and Beyond. We are happy to have you here tonight with us. We have kind of a shorter episode. It's a recap episode of what we did last weekend at GUILDCON 2023. So these are the games that we loved playing at GUILDCON.
Yeah.
For those that are not familiar with GUILDCON, it's a local gaming convention that we have at our esteemed co-host house, Jason, where we get together with some friends and we play our favorite games there. And every year it's different because we have different ones that we want to pull off the shelf and play. And today we're going to talk about what one's our favorite one. So, Jason, how are we doing tonight, buddy?
Doing all right, man. Little feeling better, man. GUILDCON started and I went into GUILDCON with like laryngitis or something and was losing my voice right at the beginning. It's just now starting to come back.
You sound 1,000 times better than you did.
I know, and I still probably don't sound good. That's the thing. Last night when I was telling you earlier, last night when I went to bed, like my wife and I were laying in bed, right before you fall asleep, just kind of chatting a little bit. My wife says, "It's so good to hear your voice again." Because she hasn't been, as far
she was getting tired of your Godfather impression.
Hey, what's yeah, I can't even do it anymore, but it's like 2 octaves down, right? Yeah, crazy. Yeah, I mean, I was telling you, when I work, I talk a lot at work, right? Because I interact with a lot of people, and I was up in front of like 50 to 60 people this week talking for several hours a day, and I just had to apologize, like, hey, sorry about my voice, but we're just gonna do this, and just push through it. So
you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah, it's what you do, what you gotta do.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we had a great time at our little GUILDCON, and we want to tell you guys all about it. But before we get there, Jason, how was your Geek Week?
I mean, it was full of GUILDCON, right? And that's coming down from GUILDCON. But I will say, I got my, and this is the, let's see if it'll show. Nah, not really. I got the Walking Dead RPG from Free League. It came in the mail. So I was opening that and reading that at my bedside. I told you I put my RPG books next to my bedside so that I can make progress on half of a page every night before I fall asleep. Right.
That's right.
But yeah, so I got that one. I unboxed the starter kit. Like always, lots of beautiful maps, beautiful maps, good character sheets. I didn't realize this, probably because I didn't. It's one of those Kickstarter campaigns where I just funded it, and then I didn't really keep up with like all the announcements and stuff,
Yeah.
But the starter box has it has character sheets for the main people from the show, like Michonne, Glenn.
Oh wow.
Yeah, those people. And I think there's like 3 modes of play in this RPG. And I'm going to get their names wrong, but there's survival mode, which is just like you dropped into it. It's almost like I got to get the feeling it's kind of like a Horde mode in an RPG. Okay. So I'm curious to try that, but it's meant to be like a 1-shot, but it's actually more, they kind of say it's like a 1 to 2 shot, but I don't know. And then there's campaign mode where you're going to create your character and kind of go on. But the idea, and then there's solo mode as well. So it has a solo mode, which will be interesting to look at. But the concept of this whole game is that you have, survivors, you have a haven, whereas like your base of operations, and you can kind of grow and bolster your haven over time. But you're forced in and out of your haven to find resources and bad people that come and mess with you. So they're trying to stay pretty true as far as I can see so far. They're staying true to the Robert Kirkman comic book, which was translated to the AMC TV series. So if you look at the book, you will definitely get a feeling that it is based off of the AMC TV series. Just recognize that is based off of Robert Kirkman's comic book, The Walking Dead. And they're both of them are very, at least for the first few seasons, were very true to each other. Mm-hmm. On there. So I'm excited to dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah, the show started to depart from the comic about season 3.
Yeah. Um, I, I think that it started to depart, but it pulled in themes from the comic. Like, what was the like Glenn, gosh, it's
Yep.
like spoilers at this point. It's been too long. Like,
It's no spoilers here,
it's
right?
been too long, right? But characters, bad guys that came into the TV series in later seasons were from the comics, but there is a lot of divergence in between to kind of get to that same point in the TV
Right.
series. There, so I'm interested to see if they've captured some of those people in the book here, but I haven't done much beyond just crack it open and read the intro section at this point.
Yeah. Awesome.
We'll
I'm
see.
still waiting for mine, so I don't know where it is. I was hoping it would come today.
It's probably in
So,
the mail somewhere.
yeah. Checks in the mail, as Jack Burton says.
There you go.
Very good, very good. So based on a recommendation that you guys gave at GUILDCON to me, I started watching Invincible.
Oh yeah.
Is the kind of animated superhero series. It's on Amazon Prime.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because it's like a faux DC world. Like it's not Superman, it's Omni-Man, and it's not Wonder Woman, it's War Woman, it's not Batman, it's Nightwing or something like that. You know what I mean? So like it's all of your DC characters with just a little bit of twist on it so that they can do it. It's been great so far. It's funny because it's like watching a DC comic like movie, and then all of a sudden like there's like crazy gore that happens. Like someone gets his head smashed in and you're like, "Oh, so it's like The Boys too."
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, I don't know if you knew this, but that series was created by Robert Kirkman.
Mm-hmm.
And based on, I think he had some comics of it that they turned into a movie, and many of the voice actors are the voices of the comics in there. So Glenn is the main character, Mark, and then he's also let's see, Maggie's in there as well. You've got like a lot of like Abram. Or Abraham, like he's in there as well. Like you just have a lot, like almost all the cast of The Walking Dead was like voice cast in the show too. So kind of a cool little crossover that we have for our Geek Week here.
Yeah.
So,
it looks like Omni-Man was originally published in the Image universe, which is Image Comics is Todd McFarlane started that comic book company, and he's the guy probably well known for Spawn.
Spawn,
yeah,
right?
Spawn. I don't know if there's Image just like all the others is known to do massive amounts of overlap in their in their stories and arcs and comic books.
Right.
There, so that it says that this was in the Image universe, but yeah, Robert Kirkman's a pretty good storyteller. I really enjoyed The Walking Dead. I'd never actually read any of the Omni-Man stuff, but maybe I should check it out.
Yeah. I think The Walking Dead was great up until he started to go work on other projects, and then it started to kind of get a little funky, And I mean, any show that lasts 10 seasons or 11 seasons or something like that will have its less strong seasons.
Yeah,
obviously.
Right.
So,
well, it's interesting in the I can't remember if it was Robert Kirkman or Brian Keene, who is a kind of an indie horror writer guy. Both those guys were talking at one point. They both wrote zombie stuff, right? About how they didn't really know where their characters were going when they wrote the stories. They just kind of wrote the stories, and then whatever happened next would happen next. So it was like, in his comics, he was killing main characters off left and right.
Yeah.
But in the in the TV series, he probably had a little bit more, maybe a little bit more control to kind of build those lasting kind of relationships with some people, with some of those main characters, because that's what pulls in like TV audiences. Like Daryl's a great example of that, right? Like in the comic book, like there really isn't a Daryl.
right.
He's there, but he's there early on and then kind of really isn't there anymore. but in the TV show, he's
He's a staple.
He's a staple and probably became one of the main characters. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Very cool.
Very good. Yeah, very good. Very good. Well, I don't know that we've got a lot for the news tonight. I will say that go check out Miniature Market, guys. Go check out Amazon.
The sale's
go
still
check
on?
out. There's a lot of sales that are starting to happen for Black Friday. And so keep your eyes on some games out there. I have seen stuff that are like 25 to 50% off, just kind of generally. Miniature Market did have their giant Halloween sale that had like 80 to 90% off on some games.
Yeah.
I had picked up a Arkham Horror, the card game, for $8 and picked up a couple other little games for like $10 and $12 respectively. And these ones were retailing for like $50 to $60. So it was a really good deal. So just keep your eyes open. 'Tis the season after all. And it's a great time to get games.
Yeah.
If you're on the hunt for them. So just that. But let's talk about GUILDCON. Like we said, this is going to be a bit of a shorter episode tonight. But we started GUILDCON Wednesday night with a pre-convention.
Invitation only night?
Invitational, exactly. And then our GUILDCON went from Thursday morning to Saturday evening. We arranged it so that we had blocks of time, usually like 8 to 12. 8 in the morning to noon, and then 1 to 5, and then 6 to 10. So we would set up different games that people were hosting, like RPGs or more kind of involved board games that people could register for times and sign up, just kind of similar to what you would find at Gen Con or other conventions and things like that. And then we also had a games library, which was kind of open anytime to anyone. You could just come by, grab a game, grab a friend, grab a table, and start playing. So a lot of gaming to be had for everyone everywhere. And we wanted to share. Yeah, go ahead.
Also had my arcade games. My arcade games got a lot more use than I thought they would.
They got a lot of use, and you had added some arcade games from the previous year.
Yeah, Street Fighter cabinet. So
yeah,
it had a bunch of Capcom side scroller beat 'em up, shoot 'em up games, which was fun.
Yeah, it was great. So so there were times when, like at lunchtime, for example, people were done eating their sandwich and their game didn't start for 20 minutes, so they jump on the arcade games and play, which is a lot of fun.
It made me happy. I smiled.
Yeah, exactly. Smiled. You couldn't talk, but you smiled.
That's right.
So we so let's start. We'll give kind of like maybe what our favorite game of the day was, or some of our favorite ones. But let's start with Blade Runner. You were hosting that one on Wednesday night.
Yeah.
And it is kind of a max 4-player game. So I was there. My brother Burton was there. We had John Trost there, and your brother,
my brother Brian
was there. Yeah. So the 4 of us were playing this. So, what did you think of Blade Runner?
So RPG, free league, so lots of good quality stuff that goes with it. So this is I've always kind of thought that Call of Cthulhu was the investigation heavy game. Urban Shadows is also one that can be investigation heavy, depending on the GM. But Call of Cthulhu really is kind of built around an investigation system. And then we played Blade Runner, and Blade Runner is like, I don't know, like levels above, in my opinion, Call of Cthulhu in terms of like crime scene. I think at one point you said it right. You said it felt like we were playing a CSI RPG.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, not bad. Just that's the kind of RPG it was. Like, it was very well themed for the Blade Runner universe. There's a lot of great lore in that book that ties in the time period, the late 2010s when the first one occurs, to not quite up into 2049, but up to the 2030s. And what happens in between there with like the Great Blackout, the assassination or the fall of Tyrell, the building of the Wallace Corporation. the prohibition on Nexus 8, the reinstatement of Nexus through Nexus 9 model that Wallace brought to the table. There's a lot of great content in there that really I loved. I loved preparing. I loved syncing, getting deep in, watching the movies. It is extremely investigation heavy. There's so much material to give out, and clues and scenes and connections and areas that you have to kind of tie the clues together in the right place and make sure you give handouts out when they get to certain areas. And one of the things that I think, you had mentioned before is in a lot of these games, you can just kind of roll to figure out and when you get comfortable with the system, all right, what skills should I use to help me kind of get unstuck, right? I don't really know how to progress with this person I'm interrogating, but I know if I roll manipulation, if I try manipulation, then I can try to get some information out that might help with the case, right?
Right.
But in in this game, you'd go into a room, and it wouldn't be just give me an observation roll. I would literally give you a picture, and you and Brian would stare at that picture, and while I would go handle some other people for 5 minutes, and you're literally trying to find the clues yourselves, your real life Earth selves, right? To say, okay, I want to ask you about this and this and this, and if you pick the right things, then I could give you more handouts or information about those things. So lots and lots of real life detective work in that game.
Yeah, it's funny because I've heard this about RPGs in general, right? Which is well, I'm not a doctor in real life, so how do I act like a doctor in the game?
Yep.
Or how do I know how to be a doctor in the game or whatever?
Yeah.
And the idea of well, I'm not a detective in real life, so how can I be a detective in the game? Comes up a lot in a lot of different games because more often than not, a lot of RPGs will have a mystery element about it or a problem that you're trying to solve, and you kind of need to get to the bottom of the problem before you can figure out what to do about it, right? Mm-hmm. And so the interesting thing is that if you're not used to asking questions or looking at the scene that you're in and figuring out what are the clues that you are that you need. In some games, like you said, you can be oh, okay, well, I know I need to make a manipulation roll or I need to make an observation check or something like that, right? That will help you. This game seemed a little bit more on the you better ask good questions thing. You know what I mean? Because if you don't, you're going to get stuck really fast. And I think it's just because it was much more like CSI than a Cthulhu scenario. And so I think we found ourselves as players a lot of times being okay, what do I need to ask? And those that weren't really ready for that found themselves just being okay, and kind of stuck in a scene.
Yeah. And I think so this is an important distinction here because, I've played RPGs at cons where the person expected me to have some form of skill, like the person I was role playing, and it's frustrating because, I am not a level 13, like you said, doctor. What are you going to do to staunch the blood artery coming out of his leg? I don't know. Whatever I would have learned when I was in doctor school on the Space Academy to be able to handle this problem. Can I just roll for that? And some of those things, you have to recognize, it's just what you roll. The difference, and a good GM will let you do that, and it doesn't detract from the experience. You're a doctor, all right, give me a medical check, see if you can save this guy because you're the doctor of the crew. All right, let's do it, here we go. Right. In this game, though, if I, as the GM, I felt because it was so focused on material around you asking questions and finding out for yourself, if I had just resolved it down to rolls of the dice, it would have detracted from the experience of grabbing that information and figuring the case out. Because you could have just walked in and say, all right, I found the guy in the back of the bar. let's go interrogate him. Roll, interrogate, roll, interrogate, roll. Next thing you know, I'm just handing you 7 or 8 handouts.
Right.
And you don't have that same feeling of actually doing discovery of the thing.
And I do think it did a good job of discovery, and the interesting thing is that sometimes, like your brother and I, we'd be off doing something, and I noticed that my brother and John would get stuck on something, and I'd be like, okay, well, did you guys upload that stuff in there? And they said, yeah. And then I'd be like, okay, here I am commenting on it, because I couldn't like just go in and role play for them because I wasn't at their location, right? So I'd be like, what was it? Do we have the caliber of the bullet? Oh, maybe we should look for the bullet. Or like, have you asked about the description of the killer? Like that kind of thing. Because they were kind of getting stuck on some of those things, and I don't fault them at all, because it's like, again, they're not detectives in real life. Like these would be like, if you were a detective, these would be like natural questions. Also, if you were at the actual scene, like Brian and I had talked about this, if we were in this person's apartment that we were searching, you gave us a picture of things to look at, and we don't know what to look at. If we were in the apartment, we'd just be looking at the things. We'd just be like, what's this piece of paper? What's that thing? What's that thing? And so we had to kind of play this cat and mouse game a little bit of like, well, is this thing important? No, it's just a normal book. Okay, well, what about that book? Oh, that's an interesting book. Here you go. And like, here's the clue. And so you're like, okay. So I do think that they did a good job of making you feel like a detective. I mean, sometimes too good of a job of making you feel like a detective, right? But it's one of those games that I think as a GM, you need to understand that your players will get stuck sometimes. So
they're going to get stuck.
They're going to get stuck. So what kind of hints, what kind of clues, what kind of verbal cues can you give them to unstick them? You know what I mean? And there was a couple of times you're like, boy, that mirror sure cracked over there where something hit it, like.
Or like when I was having the bartender was like, well, I'm not sure who was in the bar, but maybe if you show me a mug shot, I might be able to identify someone.
Right, exactly.
I'm like pointing on the table, like, show him that picture.
Exactly. But it's funny because as the night went on, I actually think that we were getting better at kind of deducing, and falling into that role. So it was good. Now, my thing is I'll be honest, by the end of the night, our table was littered with handouts. I mean, there were so many handouts that we had. It was just stacks and stacks of them. And so how was it for you prepping for this game?
It was the most effort I've ever had to put into prepping an RPG. I had to know what every handout was, what clue was in every handout, what clues triggered, what things triggered giving handouts, those handouts, and how they would tie to leading you to the next thing so that I could try to help you get what you needed out of there. I've never had to put that much effort in. It was, like I said, I loved it because I love Blade Runner.
Yeah.
So I was geeking out over it, but it was hours and hours of prep work to understand this pre-written adventure. Whereas I'm the kind of, seat of your pants GM. Like, I typically don't even like prep. Like, I spend like 20 minutes prepping an RPG. And I had to spend hours and hours like understanding all the connections, what you should get out of every clue, and when I was supposed to give you that clue, when I could move the cheese, where I had freedom to move the cheese a little bit, and where I didn't.
Did you feel like you had freedom to? Did you feel like you had freedom to move the cheese, or was it pretty rote?
Not as much as usual, but yes. I mean, it's not very combat heavy. So I inserted some combat by moving kind of some encounters were kind of specified. I moved them to areas where I felt like there was a little bit too much investigation going on. I needed to break it up. So there's a little bit of that, and moving that encounter kind of moved a person a little bit, but not as much freedom for sure. But that's because everything had kind of very strict links. It was a pre-written campaign, so
yeah, interesting. All in all, I liked it. I will say this, that just knowing the prep that you had to go through that, I don't know how I could string together a campaign for that. You know what I mean? And a lot of it is because the amount of work that you have to do to put into the clues, the amount of work that you have to do to have connections and handouts and all of those things, that's a lot of work. I don't know how you homebrew this that well. And so, and because there's not a lot of adventures out, in fact, they just came out with their second case file just recently, actually last week. I just don't know, other than the case files that you play, like how much, like how you would write some yourself. Like you'd have to be super dedicated and take a lot of time.
There's a precedent that has been set. Free League makes good content, good material. And this first case file has had so much material to give out that now there's a precedent of what you would expect with Blade Runner. You don't have to have props. I'm going to have to get a cough drop here in a second. You don't have to have props, but I think there's now an expectation that you will when you play this game with the kind of quality and content that they put out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's a little bit different than, say, like the One Ring.
I'm going to grab a cough drop real quick.
Yeah, no worries. It's like I was saying, it's a little bit different than the One Ring supplements that they've been publishing, where you've got these I know John Tross ran the One Ring campaign, and he used the Eriador book that basically gives a location with some plot hooks, some things that could go on there, some different things, and not a lot. So you can have this book and do it, but I don't know that Blade Runner is going to be able to move that direction in the future. So it'll be interesting. I'm curious to see how it is. I enjoyed. I will say this: thematically, nailed it. Right? Like, I mean, thematically, like
super
incredible.
well done.
So good. And the quality of the products, again, nailed it, crushed it, right? I will say the RPG that they were going for, which was a very investigative heavy RPG, they nailed it. I think they did a great job. I just don't know that from the average consumer is going to want to play this very often, because I don't think that it I think you have to be in the mood for being a detective. Like, literally, you need to want to play CSI, the RPG, and this is the game for you, right? So, whereas like with D&D and even Cthulhu to a certain extent, you can have different flavors of it, like on a spectrum. This one spectrum is very, very narrow, in my opinion.
Yeah, and there's another, because you could do whatever you wanted with the system, right?
Yeah.
The thing is that this was built for you to take advantage of like the LAPD resources.
Right.
So you're spending a lot of your resources accessing like crime units and labs. And so the mechanics of the system are built for you to take advantage of that kind of stuff. So it takes a lot of your focus when you're playing the game is to do detective work.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that kind of a system.
Yep. Yeah. Interesting. Cool. All right. Awesome. Well, let's move to Thursday. I'll kick it off on Thursday. So, let's see. First, I'm going to give a quick honorable mention. Thursday night, we played Paul Fricker's Full Fathom 5, which was the Cthulhu game, and I was a little nervous going into this game just because. So I was running the game. I picked it up because it's actually one of the best-selling RPGs content on the Miskatonic repository, which is like the community-generated site for Chaosium, right? So like if you and I wanted to create a Cthulhu product, we would put it on the Miskatonic repository where you could get it. And that separates it from like official Chaosium products with fan and community created stuff, right? Doesn't mean that there's bad things on there. To the contrary, there's some really amazing things on the Miskatonic repository. And So Paul, who we had on the show 2 weeks ago, like he had written this, and I was excited to run it. I was a little nervous, like I said, going into it because it wasn't your traditional Cthulhu game. And Jason, maybe you can talk about this a little bit, but it was a little bit different than you run into a problem, you go research it at the library or some, genealogy society or something like that, which leads you to another thing, which leads you to the crap hitting the fan, and then you got to deal with like a portal and a demon coming out or something like that, right? That's how a lot of Cthulhu scenarios are. And this one was a little bit different because it took place on a whaling boat in the mid 1800s. And it was really kind of written off of, Moby Dick and Captain Ahab, like chasing after a white whale, except this time the captain's chasing after, the Temple of Relia, where, he is Cthulhu's residing. So, Jason, like, what did you like? So my issue is that because it was sort of such an enclosed setting on the ship, they had this setup where the GM it was a little railroady in a sense, because like you're just getting from point A to point B. It was very much about telling a story rather than an open sandbox. But did that work for you, like in terms of a scenario for like a one shot type of thing?
I think for one shot it was fine.
Yeah.
It's railroading is not bad if it's a fun story, and this was a fun story along the way. It was 100% railroaded though. I mean, you can't avoid that. But it was fun to ride the train.
Right.
So I think that was good. There was a lot of death. There was a lot of gory death. There was a lot of, going mad, going insane, role play opportunities to role play that. So that it was fun. I enjoyed the whole thing. Yeah. At one point early on, when you kind of start to realize that you're getting railroaded, you just have to realize, hey, let's just be along for the ride. And I think everybody in the room was, so it was a good time.
Yeah, we had you were the only one that had played a Cthulhu scenario before. And so I think that the other guys were basically just like, yeah, sure, let's do this thing. You know what I mean? And they didn't know what they were in for. And like I think you knew better than they did that you were starting to get railroaded, because I think they still had a glimmer of hope that the characters were not going to die.
Yeah.
You're like, well, 1, we're playing Cthulhu. 2, Justin's GMing us. And 3, he's got that gleam in his eye.
Yeah. Like what? Yeah. The first guy who died was looking out over the ocean, and he thought he saw his mom or something in the water talking to him.
Yeah.
And then the next day you told me that I was looking out in the ocean. I was like, nope, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. You were like, and you hear a voice. I'm like, nope. I run down below decks. I was like, I know where this is going.
Yeah. But it was, I thought it was a lot of fun. And like, like you said, we had some pretty like intense deaths that had happened, and some people thinking they're seeing things and going crazy. And there was a scene in there that was like a nice cool dream sequence where like people were dreaming something was happening. They wake up and they realize that nothing had happened. And something had happened.
Something had happened.
So, but Paul, it was a great scenario. I had a lot of fun running it. And you guys seem to have a lot of fun playing it. And so I think overall it was very successful, and we had a good time.
Yeah.
We had a good time. So let me talk about, I'm going to talk about Birmingham, Brass Birmingham, the game. And I know, Jason, you probably need to grab a drink of water,
Yeah,
but
if you need to grab a drink of water real quick.
Yeah, grab a drink of water. I'll start talking about the game. So on Friday morning, and we'll get back to the Thursday games, but on Friday morning, I had the opportunity to play a great board game with Lincoln Tidwell and my brother Burton. And it was called Brass Birmingham. And if you have heard of it, it's because it's like all the rage on Board Game Geek. In fact, let me share this screen with you real quick. Right here, it's rated 8.6 on Board Game Geek. It's 2 to 4 players. It says it plays in 60 to 100 minutes. I don't understand. Like, maybe if you had 2 players, 16 minutes is about right. It took us, I don't know, about 2.5 hours to play. It took us a little while to set up and get the rules explained to us because it was the first time that we'd played it. But this is an amazing game. Like, it is an amazing game. I can't recommend it enough to people. It is a worker placement style game. Let me see if I can pull up like one of these pictures to kind of show like what happens here. Okay, so it's a worker placement game, but really what you're trying to do is make connections between different cities and villages that are producing things and then sell it to market, right? So you have resources that you can generate, and like right here would be a manufacturing. Like this would be like a manufacturing area. Here you got textiles. You can produce iron here. You can produce coal here. And then you've got these canals and railroad lines, right, that connect all of these things. So it's about managing it's kind of a deck building thing, but not really that much. You have to use cards in your hand to be able to build there. So like if I had the Birmingham card, then I could build anything on here that I want to. And then you'd need resources to do that, that include like coal and iron and things like that. They've got a lot of great mechanics here so that like you don't get totally stuck. For example, there's tons of coal and iron over here that if you really desperately need it, you can buy from the market at any time to help you, pay. It just costs you extra money. And then if you build something, like if I built this coal place here and I was connected to a market, I could sell excess coal back to the market. So I might be able to recoup some of the money that I paid to build the coal factory as well. So it's a really good give and take. A lot of great mechanics. I loved it. I really want to get this game because it wasn't super complex. The rules were very intuitive. We didn't open up the rule book once. Lincoln was able to explain to us like how the things worked, but we never got to a scenario where like, well, that's kind of weird. Like, what does the rules say about that? You know what I mean? Like, we've all played one of those games where even though we played it a million times, you get stuck on a rule. Zombicide was like this, right? Where you would be like, well, if we open a door, does it do this? Or if we do that, can we do this? And we had to look up a bunch of times. I never felt that way with this game. So and Lincoln gave us very basic explanation of how it worked. So the rules themselves were just very intuitive. The gameplay was very intuitive. Like I just knew what to do to play this game. But what it did is it allowed the strategy to be complicated. And that's I think the hallmark of a really, really great game. And you'll see that let's see. Let me go back a picture. You'll see that they rated it a weight of 3.89 out of 5, right? Which is like medium heavy. I think that it's only that heavy because there's strategy. Like there's some really like good strategy involved. The actual gameplay I think is like a 2. You know what I mean? Like it's not a hard gameplay, and once you figure it out, it's easy to go. In fact, it was interesting because there's 2 phases. There's the canal phase and then the railroad phase. And the canal phase is kind of like the first phase of the game, and then we switched to the railroad phase, which is basically the same game all over again. It just costs more to do things. And we got to the railroad phase, we finished that phase in like half an hour compared to like an hour of the canal phase before. Even though we had all the same amount of actions. It's just because we picked it up and we knew what to do so much better. And when we ended, Lincoln had won by 1 point and Burton was behind me by like 9 points. Like the spread was really close. So everybody was in it all through the end. It was a very, very good game. So can't recommend it enough. I would love to play this again. Yeah. Really good stuff. So check it out. It's called Brass Birmingham. Very, very well designed game. You can see that it's right here. It's gone down because some of these other ones have come up. I think it belongs up higher because it was just so good. So good. One of the best board games I have played in a very, very long time. So
Very cool.
yeah, very, very happy with it. Very happy with it. Jason, what did you play on Thursday?
On Thursday. We played Zombicide.
Oh yeah.
We played Zombicide Green Horde, which is fun. Zombicide's a fun game, right? Good co-op game. Yeah. You can start to feel like you're getting overwhelmed pretty quickly. Yep. I will say that this game became the yes/no game. Meaning,
that's kind of the joke after a while. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the yes/no game. Meaning, every time somebody will go to do something and be like, "No, you can't do that." Oh, wait, yes, you can do that. Or no, yes, no, yes. And it was just like that the entire time we played the game. It was no, yes, yes. You know, this is a game where the gameplay is very much determined by how the deck was shuffled.
Yeah.
When we played one of the chapters, we played the intro chapter, which I'd actually played before, and it was good. You know, it was a good kind of learn the ropes. And then we accidentally skipped to like chapter 4,
right,
or 3, chapter 3, and just the way that we had shuffled the deck. They're like, the first time we drew, there was no way we could win. I mean,
right.
We had to spread out and scatter and grab all these objectives for anyone that's played Zombicide, right? You kind of have to just run up to these objectives to flip them over and hope that you flip the right one. If not, you got to go find the other one that's the right one. And they're randomly placed, kind of shuffled and placed in the deck. But the spawn deck, we spawned when you start the game, you start with like, we'll say like damage 1 weapons, except for one person, damage 1. And zombies, you have to do the exact or more damage that zombie can take. So there are some zombies in the game that take damage 2 to kill, but only one of you has a damage 2 at the beginning of the game. So you have to go search. You have to go search for items and stuff,
right,
just to get level 2 weapons so that you can take them on. Well, when we were playing this one mission, it starts where you got to run down this hallway just to spread out to the rest of the map. And you run down the hallway, there's a spawn point right at the very end of the hallway. And the first card we drew was the level 3 Abomination.
Yep.
No one has weapons to kill this guy. And he can one-shot in the game for you.
Yeah.
No one has weapons. So then we're trying to scatter away from this thing, and you just can't. And we couldn't get away. You could never get ahead enough to be able to search to try to find weapons. And then all the other cards that we were pulling after him were fatties, which were 2.
Yeah.
So none of us had 2. So now we're just getting bombarded on either side with zombies that can one-shot us, and there's no way for us to kill them. It was an example of a fun game that can be impossible to beat just on how you shuffle the deck. Yeah. And so we restacked that one pretty quick. Right.
Yeah.
And then I think even the second time we played that mission, it was the same thing. We tried to take a different technique where we went and opened a room that was near us to try to do an early search. We opened that room, and what did we spawn?
The Abomination.
With now he's even closer to us at the spawn point.
With the Necromancer.
With the Necromancer. So it's like, it was kind of like, okay. And we tried that for a little bit. And then I think we tried it a third time, failed, and we were like, okay, well, at that point, we'd played the game 4 times and won 1 and lost 3, but had a fun time doing it. So I like Zombicide. There's so many different versions of it now.
Yeah.
There's like the original, there's Green Horde, there's Black Plague, there's I don't know, another one.
Yeah. There's like a lot of modern ones. There's like a Ghostbusters pack now. I mean, there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, well, and because Simon, right?
Yep.
Simon, they also used to put out weekly missions.
Yeah, they still do, I think.
Do they? Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of replayability in this game. It's a good.
One thing I saw is Simon just came out with a Kickstarter for whoever's interested. It's called Deceased. So it's like DC Comics, right? And then the rest of it is East, like Deceased, right? And so they it's basically like DC superheroes versus the zombie horde. So looks interesting. So it's a Kickstarter right now if you're interested in checking it out. I'm sure they've got some pretty fun mechanics in there and all that stuff. It'll be Zombicide with superheroes, which could be a lot of fun.
Yep.
So yeah, very cool. Very cool. All right, what was your game on Friday that you enjoyed playing?
I actually don't remember when I played these games, but the next one that I played that I enjoyed was one that I got off of a miniature market sale, one of the sales there, which was fun. So let me share my screen if you can accept that real quick.
Oh yeah, for sure.
This was Deep State. I think I got this game for like $10. Might have been 10 or 15 bucks. I don't remember. It was super big sale. And it's a fun game. It's got a lot of really fun art. It's got that kind of like comic book feel to it. But the general, it's a worker placement game at its heart. And you are placing your guys. They're kind of like secret agents or shadow government kind of things, right? And you're putting your worker placements on these objectives to try to take them. And by taking those objectives, you place them in front of you and you get certain symbols, symbols that are kind of on the cards. And that lets you go after some of these larger projects, domination projects, world domination projects. So you're sending your secret agents kind of out there to get some objectives out there. And they're like government objectives. They're like, science objectives, order. And when you get the right amount, you can then go put more agents on you can start to make progress on these domination projects up top. And let's see if I can get another picture of there's one. So actually, let me find a different one. Or I'll go back and just do that one again. So you kind of put one of your little meeples on here. And when you do, it takes one meeple that you put on there, and then you have to kind of pay these resources. And then you can keep moving from this one to this one, this one to this one, and so on. And as you get to the later ones, they're worth victory points. But they also do things for you. Like this one lets you draw to, I think those are called objectives. Or no, those are called treaties. Draw 2 treaty cards, and you can put one in play without having to pay its cost. So you get kind of these bonuses as you move on, with the theme showing up that you're basically your shadow government is kind of, or your puppet government, whatever, is kind of starting to have a major influence on the world there. So I think it's a 5-player game. It might only be 4 players. But it plays really fast. It's one of those games where there are several things you can do, but you can kind of only do a very small amount on your turn, and then the turns flip around really fast. So as you're putting your guys on those objective cards and you're getting them, you're placing them in front of you, like this one, right? You're placing them in front of you, and you're getting these little trade symbols, and those trade symbols will let you go after the planet domination projects. Really easy to play. It's one of those games where, like, when I was reading the rule book, we were reading the rule book trying to figure out how to play it. It was like we were like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on in this rule book. And then once we play one round, we were like, oh, it's like there's like 2 things you can do, and it takes like 20 seconds to do it each.
Yeah.
So fun game. You can see the artwork on the cards, right? It's super, super cool artwork. I mean, it all feels like that, the whole thing. And it feels like you're doing shadow. It even has a good theme. It feels like you are really this kind of shadow government thing that's kind of trying to take over there. Plays fast. I think we played it in like, we probably played it in an hour.
Okay.
maybe a little over an hour, which included learning the rules. So if we knew the rules, we could probably play the game in he could probably play the game in like 30 to 40 minutes.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, really, really good and really fun. Like I said, I got on a miniature market for like I think $10. So
And
it was a pretty
who
big
doesn't
sale,
like a good Illuminati token?
right? Exactly.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
right now, on Miniature Market, it's going for $32.
oh,
Right.
so it's back up.
Yeah, it's at its typical discount right now. There is an expansion for $20 called the Global Conspiracy Expansion. But this is one of those things that if you're interested in this game, put a watch on it on Miniature Market, because I guarantee you, like if it's dipped down to that price before, it'll do it again sometime in the future
Mhm.
or get close to it. Like if it's at 32, I wouldn't be surprised if you see it for 15, like maybe
Yep.
just before, just after Christmas, So keep an eye on it because you may see it for that. So
Yep.
yeah,
So that was a fun game.
very
I enjoyed that one.
very, very cool. So on Friday, I ran. I'm going to share my screen here. I ran Pendragon. I had gotten a review copy of the Pendragon starter set from Chaosium, and I think that we'll do a broader show review on this topic on Pendragon, because it was a really interesting thing. It's a different kind of RPG than I was used to running. It's a roll under D20, right? So a lot of your stats are like 8 or 10 or something like that. You got to roll under it to be successful with your D20. It has a lot of really interesting things. Let me just pull up a picture here. I'll zoom in on this real quick. This is like a picture of the folio that comes in the starter set, which is basically your character, right? And there's a lot of great things that happen with it. You've got your characteristics over here. That includes like your weapon stats and stuff like that. You've got your skills and battle skills that you can do. So I mean, if you're thinking like D&D or even Call of Cthulhu, these are like your perception checks, your sleight of hand style stuff, right? But more night focused. And then you've got an interesting system over here with traits. And I think that this is really what gives it its unique nightly feel, because the whole point of Pendragon is that you are part of King Arthur's court, right? You're one of the knights of the round table. And so you're out there doing knightly deeds, and you're out there like being chivalrous knights. Like it's all about honor and glory for you, right? And what I really like about this system is that I think the RPG world for a while really liked getting into kind of the gray space, like is my character good? Is he bad? Is he a little in between? Like is he kind of the anti-hero type of thing? This system, you're here to play a knight in shining armor, literally. I mean, you're the good guy. You're supposed to be the good guy out here, and you're supposed to be doing good things and be heroic and do amazing knightly things that the peasants just can barely comprehend because you're an amazing knight, and so it's high fantasy, low magic, right? The magic that does exist in here is like more tricks and kind of parlor tricks type of thing, right? I will say that this is a night. This is like King Arthur's court. But if you wanted to steal these mechanics and run a Game of Thrones RPG, it would be amazing. It would be amazing to do that, because you could run bad characters, bad knights with this same thing. You just kind of flip it, right? So, but it's that kind of world where it's like there exists some magic, but it's kind of low level, almost folklore style magic. And not like your sorcerers or wizards or anything like that. Like Merlin's in there, and our players asked him one time, like, "Hey, can you heal me?" And I told him several times, I'm not that kind of wizard." You know what I mean? And they'd be like, "Hey, can you do this?" He's like, "I'm not that kind of wizard." And he was like, Merlin's really just about, using his he's like a druid, right? So he's got some kind of nature magic, but He was more about political manipulation than anything, so that's the kind of wizard he was, so anyway, we had a great time. It took me a little bit to kind of really get into the flow of it, and in fact, I do think that I need to look at some of the reviews on how to run like a big battle, because unfortunately in the starter guide, I think it was written with you having the core rule book in your hand as well. So there were some things in there where even the quick start rules guide that comes in the starter set didn't answer some of the questions that were needed in some of the other portfolios on how to like run a big battle. So I got to a point where I'm like, I'm not running this very well, so we just kind of went off the trail, and I had them go do some other stuff, which they really enjoyed doing. I had them meet a lady in the lake. I had them I had them go after some, Highland Picts and recover a sword that they had let get stolen. So we had a good time with it. Really fun time. Combat in this is brutal. The thing I love about it is there's no initiative in this game. Like, you don't roll initiative, you just kind of do things. And when people fight hand to hand, it's an opposed melee attack. So both players will roll attack rolls at the same time, and the person that wins does the damage, right? Unless it's tied, then they both do the damage. So it can get really swingy either way, depending on how well you do it.
Yeah, so question. So if there's no initiative, how do you determine who's attacking who?
The players do. So the players say, like, I'm going to go attack this guy. But the thing is both that guy and the player will roll.
Okay, so so the players always determine who's going to face an enemy.
Yeah, unless, at one point I had some picks sneaking in on them. So, I said, this guy's up in your face right now. Do you know what I mean? Okay. And so that the story really drove the enemy getting into it, which was really cool because it didn't slow down the story.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? It really felt like the combat was integrated with the story. Like, I didn't okay, everybody, hold on. Everybody roll initiative. Let me take your numbers. Okay, you three get to go, and then these two guys get to go, and you get to go, and then these three guys get to go. Like, we didn't have to do any of that. It's just like, all right, you're fighting this guy? Okay, roll. Oh, you won. Sweet. Do your damage. Oh, my gosh, you killed him. Oh, the other guy rolled. Oh, you missed that one. He's going to destroy you. And so it was a lot of good stuff. A lot of fun stuff. So we'll do a deeper dive on this. I don't want to go too deep into this because there's a lot of good things in here that we can talk about. And the starter set itself was just a quality one from Chaosium. But I just wanted to say that I got to run it, and I had a really fun time with this. I think this would be a great one to do like a 3 to 5 shot with, right? Like an actual like little campaign, and you would just have a real good time running it. So check it out. It's on Chaosium. And yeah, it's I think the starter set is $30, and it's an amazing value for it. So totally check it out. All right, Jason, you got another game for us?
Yeah, so I had a couple fun games. I was trying to figure out which one I wanted to mention. But I guess I'll go ahead and mention, I ran Hell Knight, which was fun. I really wanted to run that for a while now. That's that, indie RPG based off of, you being a group of actual knights from hell that were sent out of hell to go bring back the rogue Archon demons back to hell so they can fulfill their duties to guard their circles, to restore the balance before heaven storms your gates. So so you're playing a bad guy, kind of a bad guy, but you're out to defeat the bad guys and bring them back. So it's a little bit of a fun setting. It's absolutely like an 80s metal setting too. Like think of like the cartoon Heavy Metal.
Yep.
Like it's that kind of a feel of a game. and I would say, even though our session was very brutal, I tuned it down a bit because I think our group was not super heavy metalish.
Right.
80s heavy metal, like, but it was, and it was a lot of fun. My voice, this was like the high point of my voice dying. So
Yeah.
I was like a super octave low. My voice was cracking, like you could almost hear my throat bleeding in the back. And we're playing this like 80s like demon like metal game, and it was just, I don't know, it seemed like it was appropriate at the time, right? But
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun with it. Super super simple system.
Yeah.
It is absolutely focused um on just telling a fun story in that type of in the roaring 80s, and not getting hung up on, well, what equipment do I have,
Mhm.
and what kind of bonus does that give me in this scenario. It's no, just like, let's just go have fun and wreak havoc, and like, and have a good time doing it. It's the whole game is played when you're rolling up your character. You can use, I think, a D12 here and there, but just so you get 1 through 12. But the
Yeah.
whole game is played with 2d6. So you're
Nice.
rolling 2d6. You're trying to roll under your stat, but as high under your stat as you can. So like your stat is a 7. If your like style is a 7 and you want to do something crazy awesome on your bike, you roll 2d6 and you're trying to roll under a 7.
Yeah.
Anything an 8 or over is a critical. So that means you can really only do criticals if you're really good at a specific stat, right? So the stats are a grit, brains, and style. That's it.
Mhm.
And whatever you want to do, just kind of justify it being under one of those. So some people had like a like a, a 10 in their
Yeah.
style, so they could roll. They had the potential to roll an 8 or a 9 or a 10, right? So they could get a crit 3 potential,
Yeah.
with 3 potential numbers on 2d6. But other people had like a 5 in brains, so like they're never going to crit with brains. They're just not good enough, and it's going to be really hard for them to succeed. It's a fail forward game. That's all my games are, right? So even though you fail, you're still progressing a little bit.
Yeah.
And because it's so simple rules wise, it's super easy to improv. And so we actually improved the whole night. I had like, we went to dinner like right before to like Five Guys, and while
Yeah.
I'm eating my burger, I'm like, I'm like coming up with this idea of what we could do for the game, and then that's what we just ran with it the whole night. It seemed like everyone had a
Nice.
good time.
Yeah. It's funny because this is one of those games where, part of the RPG experience is rolling up your character and literally rolling it up, right? Which is roll it and see what kind of fun stuff you do. Mothership is a great, example of this too, where you just roll it up and you have a good time doing it, because like what it does is it keeps you from choosing like the typical, like, oh, I want to play a warrior this time, or I want to play a magician, or whatever it is. You just kind of get what you get, and then you just go with it. And in fact, I had this whole idea of being like this, like really cool Hellboy style, like Hell Knight, and I ended up being basically like the team mom. Like I ended up rolling this trait that I could bake anything out of, or make anything edible out of anything biological. And another dude rolled up on his bike. He had a little oven inside of it, like a pizza oven style thing, And so, like, I was like, oh, great. I'm just going to be team mom. And I, like, baked some treats, out of this roadkill for, like, the high school prom that we had, like, burst in on, And I was
And
like,
of
who's that?
human appendages.
That's right. I may have taken a human leg and made dumplings out of it, that I fed to the kids. I mean, I am a demon after all, right? And but it's like I went in and be like, "Hey, can I talk to the head of the PTA?" You know what I mean? Like, just kind of like, and I gave like a disapproving look at one point, right? Like from a mom that ended up like rotting this dude away, So it was. I mean, I did not go into that game expecting to play that character. But that's the one I got, and that's the one I just kind of rolled with, right?
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting is that we're bad guys, but we're trying to do good things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the dichotomy there is kind of interesting, and it manifested itself at one point where in the scenario, there was a whole bunch of kids that had been locked up, and it was clear that they were going to be used for some sort of ritual, right? And so the right thing to do, the moral thing to do, was let these kids go, right? Now, I wanted to let the kids go, not because that was the right thing to do. I'm a demon after all. I don't care.
Yeah.
I didn't want those kids there so that the ritual would go through
Yep.
and cause this other thing to become much more powerful, right? Like, so I ended up doing the right thing for I guess the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think that kind of sums up the morality of like the characters in this RPG. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was fun. It started with a nice hell ride out of hell, on your hell rides, which are basically monsters themselves, right? Like, think of like a Harley hog, but that's living, breathing carnivorous monster that you're riding on top of, right? Riding out of hell, riding through into some small town in the middle of nowhere, and then that had a high school prom that was going wrong, and then finding your way into like the basement of an abandoned hospital where there's a vampire living there that's basically consuming the kids and all the other stuff. So it was a fun 80s, horror movie ride, I think.
Yeah, totally.
Yep.
It's a game that I would love to play again. I don't know how often I would love to play it. You know what I mean? Like,
it's like Mothership. I love Mothership, but I would not want to play Mothership like as my main RPG all year.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It would ruin the flavor for me. Do you know what I mean? Like, you get tired of it. So,
yep.
I think it's a lot of fun though. A ton of fun. Let's see. The next game that I want to talk about, let me see if I can pull it up. It was called Dead Reckoning. The game. Here it is. We'll pull it up on Board Game Geek here. Okay, so this game was a Kickstarter that had come out, and the only way to get it, unfortunately, was to be part of the Kickstarter. Now, I saw that you could get it for like $200 on eBay or something like that with all the Kickstarter stuff, which actually, I mean, it sounds like a lot of money, but like all the production value of this game was very high. They had like nice metal they had metal coins. They had a little ship that you used. They had these little like pieces that you would put out that like buildings. And I guess the guy who owns the game that we played, he printed out like these 3D chests that you had that you could keep like your money in and stuff like that. It was pretty good, but it was really interesting. So you're a pirate, and let me see if I can pull up my another thing, because I want to show you like what the layout of the screen looked like, or of the game looked like. Oh, hold on. Maybe I didn't have it actually pulled up. Oh, shoot. Where did I have it?
My brother brought this one, right?
Yes. Okay, here we go. All right, here we go. Okay, so this is like the layout of the game. And this little guy here on the left, this green board, that was my ship board. Okay, and these were my cards that I had, and these were my tokens, and this circle thing right here represented my harbor, right? And here was my chest that had my money in it. But this was really where the playable area was, right here. You see up here is where the 4-player harbors were at. Like, so this was my harbor that also corresponded to this right here. I could just keep stuff on this, so I didn't have to keep reaching across the board, you know? But you would start at your harbor, and you could go venture out into the ocean and discover these islands, right? You see how some of these are flipped over? If you stop there, you would discover the island and see what it was. And you could do a lot of different things at these islands. You could exert some influence. So basically you like land on the island and you say, okay, like this is ours. And if you have enough influence, you end up gaining what they call permanent control of it, right? And so then you kind of like own the island, and you can start producing resources there that get you money. The whole goal is to get money at the end of the day, right? And you do that through trading stuff. You do that through like getting economy on your islands and stuff like that. Somebody could come in and let me zoom in because you can see it right here. You see how there's a blue one up here and there's a yellow one here. Or actually, this is a better example. You see how there's a purple box right here, but there's a yellow one right here. Purple at one point had owned this island, but yellow had come in and exerted more influence than they did. So they get to add their token, and they're now the ones that permanently control. Well, these little gold things right here, what you do is at the end, you count up how many, people had controlled this island, and the one who had it the most gets, the top coin value, the second gets a second value, third gets a third value, like that. So there's a whole give and take of these islands that you're just trying to wrestle control from different people. And then what you have here is on these islands, you can purchase these upgrades to your card. So you see my brother here, he had his gunner card. And what happens is this is what he would get just from playing his card. He'd get 1 barrel and he could use a cannon if he was attacking, right? And then he purchased this upgrade card that from one of these islands right here for the cost of, you see right here is like 1 barrel is an upgrade for this one. But he purchased an upgrade and you get to put it in that card for the player. And so now he gets 1 influence for every cannon he has on the card. So he would get like an extra influence that he could use to take over an island basically when he played this card.
How does it stick to the card?
So it's really cool. They had these, it's basically in a sleeve, and these are transparent. You can kind of see, like with this guy right here, how it's transparent. And you would drop it down into the sleeve, and then it would just kind of show up there.
Yeah,
and
like
so
glue.
Each card had a top, a middle, and a bottom. So you see, like this one is a middle one right here. This one's a top. You can see the little thing right there, right? And like I think one of these down here, like this one's a bottom. So you can only upgrade each card like 3 times, right? But the way that the game worked was that we all had our own decks of cards, right? And it had like a captain, a bunch of crew, like different things different people, and it was the same deck for everybody. But you would shuffle them up. There's 12 cards in it, and you would draw 4. At the beginning of your turn, when you drawed 4, or when you drew 4, drew 4, you got to choose one of those 4 cards and upgrade them. And basically, you would just like flip the card over, and it would have like extra things. So it went from a level 1 to a level 2, or level 2 to level 3, or level 3 to level 4. And you could do that, just one time in that hand. And so like they give you extra bonuses and stuff like that. And at the top here, you have these achievements that happen, right? Like this one was like explore 3 tiles, be the one to explore 3 tiles. This one was get like 12 barrels anywhere on the board or in your cargo or on your harbor. This one was get 30 coins. This one was like build 4 times. Build buildings. Like you can see right here, here's a building that he built. And like this is a fortress right here. And it protected the island from taking over influence. Like you would have to come destroy the fortress before you could exert influence over it. So, but it cost a bunch of barrels to play. And there was only 1 card in your hand of 12 that would let you build those types of buildings. So you had to play it at the right time and all that stuff, right? So building, they had all these different achievements. And basically the game ended when one person triggered 4 of these things. Everybody got 1 more turn, and then you counted up your coins basically that you had. It was a lot of fun. I didn't think I was going to have as much fun with it as I did. And there was a lot of different ways to win and a lot of different ways to do things. And so I never felt like I was being corralled one way or another, right? That I didn't have options. I will say at the end of the game, there was a lot of fortresses on the islands and a lot of there's cannons that will give your ship damage and stuff like that. So like you had to be careful about what way you were going through the ocean, or else you would take too much damage and sink. And so, there's a lot of really cool ways to just play the game. And our friend Nick, who we met at the Nova Open, he ended up destroying us on this. I thought I was doing pretty good, but he crushed us all. He had a couple of turns where he got a lot of money, so he was really banging with it. So it was a lot of fun. I hope that they come out with retail with this. I doubt though that when they do come out in retail, that you're going to get a lot of the. I bet these like barrels and things will be just little cardboard tokens. These little buildings will just be like little cardboard tokens that you put out. I bet you'll get the ships as plastic, but all the other cool stuff like I told you could see the metal coins down in here. Like they're really good metal coins. Like I bet you don't get those, so. So if you're really into those components, look for like someone selling it on eBay right now, because a lot of them just got fulfilled. So I'd check it out. It was a lot of fun though. I really enjoyed it.
Cool.
Yeah. Any other game you want to mention, Jason?
I played Moonrakers, which is always a great one. We've talked a lot about that. I played it with an expansion. I think I have like every expansion in that game. This is the first time I've ever played with one, and it was a great expansion that actually added to the gameplay, sped it up, didn't really modify it. We've talked a little bit about expansions here and there, what makes a good expansion, and this is a good expansion. So that was fun. I also played Parks. I'd never played Parks before. I wanted to play that one. It's a very pretty game. It's another one of those walking simulator games, like the Road to Taikaido, right? Just kind of a calm, relaxing. It was nice to break the day up with that. So play a lot of games, a lot of fun people. GUILDCON is great. It's only about, what do we have max? Like maybe 20 people one day.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in my basement, so only can be so big, but to have just 3.5 solid days of friends over playing games, doing something we like to do. So good times.
Yeah, I agree. It was great having everybody out, and we thank everybody for coming. And, one of the great things is like, we'll do like potluck lunches and, just really just enjoy each other's, company as we're having a sandwich. And the nice thing is we don't have to worry about, oh crap, did I eat today? Or because like, unfortunately with Gen Con, sometimes your schedule doesn't allow you to go grab something to eat for like 8 straight hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
Depending on where you're going. But we're able to build in the breaks and have that social time as well. Yep. And it was just really good having everybody there and having a good time. And I don't know about you, but I went home Saturday. Sunday, I had church stuff I was doing, and I crashed so hard Sunday night. Like, I think I slept 11 and a half hours that night. I went to bed at 8, and I didn't get up till like 7:30 the next morning. I was out. I was so dead, but it was a lot of fun for sure.
Yep.
So,
moved to Northern Virginia, become our friends, and come to GUILDCON,
or just become our friends, and you can still come. Yeah. Because we had people. I think the furthest one we had come out there was 3 guys from Idaho.
Idaho, yeah.
Came out. Yeah.
We had Ohio. Do we have Ohio?
Ohio? Yep.
Ohio, Idaho. Yeah, we had multiple people from Idaho that didn't even know each other. So
yeah,
it was pretty good. We've had people from Nevada. I always have to pause when I say Nevada to make sure I say it right.
Yeah,
because I always say Apple, Nevada. Apple. Okay, yeah, Nevada. Because I have a friend from Nevada who says we have apples, not apples at Nevada.
That's
so it's
correct.
Not Nevada, it's Nevada. So California once too. So it's fun. Yeah. It's a good time.
Yeah. And we had a lot of newer people here this year. Like your brother came out, for example. He'd never been to a GUILDCON. We had our friend Nick that came out.
Yep.
And had a good time with us, right? So like our circle is expanding, and we enjoy everybody who comes out. So a lot of good times there. We just really encourage everybody to hopefully you can find something like this, right? Even if it's just like 4 or 5 of your best friends. That's how our GuildCon started out. What, like 6 years ago? Like when we did it, it was Sean Con originally.
Sean Con, yeah.
That we did in Sean's house, and there was literally like 5 of us playing.
It was like 5 or 6 people for 3 days. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had a great time doing that, and it's kind of grown since. And even our friends who may not be super keen on, driving out to Indianapolis and getting hotels and all that stuff, like they love GuildCon because it's us and our friends just playing games. So hopefully you guys can, find those friends out there that are doing that too, and just get the games that are sitting on your shelves that you want to play and have a good time. So yeah. Anyway, but that's pretty much it for us. We hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to try to put the links to all the games down below so that you guys can check them out, because there's some really good ones out there. And of course, we'd love to hear, like, if you were at our GuildCon, what would you have loved to play? What's sitting on your shelf that's out there that needs some gaming love? Let us know. And otherwise, we will see you all later and see you at the tables. Have a good night, everybody.